Tangerine, The Outer Worlds. Hey,
Yeah,
Tony. We've been recording Steam Next Fest
yeah,
Tangerines, and then I said to
yeah.
you, when after we finished recording them, Tony, is there any more you want to do? And you said no. And then we had a conversation
Yeah.
about The Outer Worlds for half an hour.
Eh,
And I said,
Genuine.
why didn't we record this? I have so much footage of The Outer Worlds and so
Yeah.
much to say about it.
To be fair, okay. Okay. I want to quickly say this happens a lot for people watching. Very often, like we're finishing, like I don't want to record anymore. Like we've done quite a bit. It's like then we start talking about other stuff. It's like then we start actually talking about one of the games. It's like we could have just recorded it.
I should need to
But
always be recording.
yeah, I said in this case though, I'm kind of glad we did it off like with the conversation we did before, because I feel like I've been able to like collect my thoughts over like the past day and like really think about this game, which I have not done before.
Yeah,
Because
so
I really love like the dialogue. I really love the writing in this game. But like you brought up, like I was saying, like something's missing. I don't know what it was, and like you brought some good points.
So let's quickly go over what
Let's
this
start.
game is.
Yeah.
So this is The Outer Worlds, and if anyone knows me, they know I recently played Fallout New Vegas, and I think it's a masterpiece of a game. I think it's one of the best RPGs of all time.
Does anyone disagree that Fallout New Vegas is a masterpiece?
I think most of the people who dislike New Vegas would say it's technically flawed and released in a rushed, unfinished state, which I can
Completely
understand.
agree.
Like, I could see like a lot of people right now probably don't like Cyberpunk, but if it ever got to a point where it was like they fixed all the bugs that the game had and they released some DLC that fixed up the game, I could see people in the future going back and playing that game and going, "This is an undiscovered masterpiece."
Well, no, okay. I think there's a difference with Cyberpunk and New Vegas, in my opinion. Whereas, like with New Vegas, like you have this buggy mess, but like underneath it is this absolute masterpiece. With Cyberpunk, you have this buggy mess, and underneath it you have an incomplete, which maybe one day it could have been a masterpiece, possibly, but isn't right now.
It was made by Fallout New Vegas was made by Obsidian, and
I love Obsidian.
I think Obsidian makes some interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Because I've played Grounded as well, which is like the survival crafting game. You're like a shrunk down kid.
Yeah.
This is going to be mostly dialogue. I don't even need audio.
It's fine. Spoilers, dialogue.
So I just recorded like the first half an hour of gameplay of the base game and both the DLCs for the game.
The thing is, this game is mostly dialogue, so this is like you're accurately capturing the game.
Yeah, it's mostly dialogue, but there's some parts where I wish there was more dialogue, and I get into that with the DLC especially.
And yeah, okay.
But yeah, anyway, what I was saying was I loved Fallout New Vegas. I thought it was one of the best RPGs that I'd played ever, really.
Yep.
So when I heard the team that made it, Obsidian, they'd broken off and they were doing their own studio thing under Microsoft now. They're sort of like autonomous under Microsoft, so they sort of make whatever the hell they want. Given that they've just made like a survival crafting game, and then they're also making that weird like monastery, like Spanish Inquisition game, like Pentient or something like that.
Weird ass game.
I like they have that sort of autonomy to just make another one. But then I heard,
it's very good.
Hey, Obsidian, the guys who made Fallout New Vegas, one of your favorite games of all time, they're making another first-person RPG, Fallout-style game in space. I was like, okay, I have to try
this. And this time they're in charge instead of being dictated by Bethesda.
Yeah. So, some things to get off the bat. A lot of people said Fallout New Vegas was very broken because Bethesda rushed Obsidian and caused them to have to, put them on a clock, and they had to rush it out the door, and there was tons of bugs. The Outer Worlds, from what I understand, didn't have to go out a certain date, or they weren't under the same constraints, and I've had quite a few bugs with it myself. It's not a perfect game by any stretch. This is sort of the interesting system that we can see on screen at the moment is the VAT system in this game's been replaced with the time dilation system, which is essentially just a slow down time mechanic where you can aim
Yeah.
for certain parts of the body to maim or go for headshots or whatever you want to do. I was never particularly a big fan of VATS, but I thought it was pretty cool. I preferred the implementation of VATS in the original Fallout games to how they did it in time dilation here. It just sort of feels like you can slow down time sometimes. It doesn't really feel that impactful. I mean, the really cool thing
Mm,
about VATS in
I
Fallout
don't like
was
either of them.
there was really cool perks around it where you had stuff like
Yeah,
the mysterious stranger or misfortune would come in, and I was like, oh, that's really cool that you can press VATS and someone just walks along and starts shooting people.
I think,
Whereas
but in my opinion, is like I feel like there's nothing that really like attack like nothing really alters the slow motion stuff. Like I feel like if they added, for me anyway, this is like a personal thing. If they added
yeah,
stuff like more interesting stuff to the slow motion thing, I would prefer the slow motion thing to the bats. I don't like
so
the bat system at all.
this is where I get into one of the big differences between like a game like New Vegas and the Outer Worlds. Um, Perks are kind of just net positives most of the time in this
Yeah,
game. You
yeah,
take a perk and it'll give you like +10 walk speed, or
yeah.
you'll get like time dilation lasts longer, or you can move faster in time dilation. They're not very interesting, a lot of the perks in this game.
No,
Whereas you had stuff like the perk system in New Vegas, and it was incredibly interesting where you would have like these double-edged swords or these really wacky perks where they could completely change your game but also hinder you in a lot of ways. Um, Now, the Outer Worlds has sort of a system like this, but it's not really well advertised. I'm guessing maybe some people don't even know it exists in the game. It's called the Floor system.
yeah. The floor
And
system is really confusing.
so, for example, my character, I kept falling off cliffs. If you take enough fall damage, you can take what's called a floor perk, and your character will become like scared of heights essentially, and you'll get minus
Yeah,
stats based on that. But
yeah,
if you take a floor, you get an extra perk point, which is really important for leveling up your character. And this gives
yeah.
you access to, these different abilities like cheaper vendor prices or carry. I mean, I get vendor prices, carry weight, just anything so I can walk around looting everything on the map.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, there's some okay like perks, but there's nothing particularly interesting. It's more just like
It
combat stuff.
Yeah, just compared to something like New Vegas, like it is unfortunate. But yeah, they should. It should have just been like because I would have thought right. Like if you're the devs behind New Vegas, you're gonna make a new game, your own IP, right? You go let's go absolutely crazy with the new perks. Like, wouldn't that have? Isn't that the direction you would have personally gone?
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe they just were like scared of making
Yeah, that's
Fallout
fun.
again, and they were just trying to be very
But
different.
yeah, but could you not go? Okay, we want to. Okay, if for me personally, it's like, oh, we made Fallout. We need perks. We don't want it to feel like Fallout. Let's just go. Let's just like be even more creative. It's like kind of. I just feel like there are certain things in the game that like they kind of could have set up to be like more interactable with the perks. Like I
Well,
just feel like they could have done.
yeah, so I think the floor system was an attempt of bringing that back, but I don't think
Yeah,
it's well implemented.
not if the
Um,
rest of the stuff is boring. So it doesn't like add any. It
let
doesn't.
let let me quickly go into like the positives about the Outer Worlds that I
Yeah.
like,
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
I can start to
Yeah.
go into the things I didn't like. So the positives of the Outer
That's
Worlds,
fair.
I think combat's way better. In the same way that um, Fallout 4 is a much better FPS than Fallout 3 or New
Yeah.
Vegas, but it's a
But
much worse RPG.
is
Um,
that just because it's a modern game though? Like just the mechanics have mature. Like
Yeah,
they.
the shooting mechanics in the Outer Worlds are a lot better than New Vegas, and also
Yeah.
you have these companion abilities that are pretty cool, where you'll get
Yeah.
specific buttons where you can command your companions to use their special attack, and you can level up your companions, and you can change the way that these special attacks interact with each other. You can also, I like the system where a lot of the companions have very similar perks, but it allows you to set up the companions in different ways, where you could have one be a tank so it will like take more damage and get more armor, or you can
Yeah.
have a companion just be like a DPS unit where it'll just shoot people from afar. I think this was also done as well for people who were playing on hardcore mode, where companion death was permanent. So
Oh right.
you would probably want to set up companions with more health and make them tankier and less likely to go down in battle.
Yeah.
Um, and then that was a big thing with New Vegas was New Vegas and the Outworlds. The game's pretty easy,
Mm,
um, especially when you're not playing on the like hardcore mode. I would say the Outer Worlds is probably a lot easier than New Vegas. Um, if you play without the need to
yeah.
sleep, eat, and drink. Because it got to a point where I would just I just kept having inventories full of stuff, and I had no reason to use any of the power ups or the drugs or the food, or I would never run out of stims. That's one thing this game. I don't know if you consider it positive, but you never run out of ammo in this game ever. I've never run out of ammo. Whereas in New Vegas, I was
Uh,
constantly having to buy ammo.
I think
Um,
that's technically a negative because, like, I feel like you don't want to be like annoyed that you're running out of a resource, but you should like, if you're trying to survive in this capitalistic world, like, shouldn't you feel like you're like really like trying to make ends meet?
Um, yeah, you just keep going over the positives. So I think the combat's better. The combat abilities are cool. I like the setting. I think the
Yeah,
setting's
I
pretty
love
cool.
the
I
same.
like the
I really
world
love the
where
same.
it's just a capitalistic. Everyone has to work for the factory. Like as soon as you get to
Yeah.
the first planet, Edgewater, you'll talk to the grave master who's going around collecting his debts because everybody has to
Hmm.
rent out their own grave site before they've died to make sure they can pay for it. Which is just goes to show you like the tone of the game. I
Yeah.
know a lot of people they thought it was a bit heavy-handed. It was a bit like hit you over the head with the capitalist themes. Um,
Suppose.
but
But
I think it's
I really
fine.
like the idea. Just I really like the idea. Just like making like how extreme can you go with capitalism? Like, I quite like that as a concept, and I think they could have fleshed it out in a more heavy-handed way, in my opinion, or a more boring way, perhaps. But they went quite creative.
Mm. I think another thing that I would say positive again is I think the dialogue when it does shine through, I think it is still
Yeah,
really good. There's some really funny side dialogue options, but I
yeah.
think the majority of the dialogue's not too interesting. I think it's like
I
there's some random side quests where I was just laughing at how funny the dialogue was. But
yeah,
then generally, I think one of my main complaints about the Outer Worlds is a lot of the characters aren't very interesting.
yeah. No, I see.
Whereas,
I find the dialogue interesting, but it's also is part of the problem as well. Is like the dialogue doesn't have much impact in like what you choose doesn't impact the world too much.
right, so that's another point I'll get into.
Yeah,
So one of my big complaints about the Outer Worlds is nothing you do in the game really seems to matter.
yeah.
Two people could play this game and you would probably end up with almost exactly the same results.
I
There's nothing
think
you really do to impact the world. Most of the time, dialogue choices will just lead you to the same dialogue tree.
yeah.
It's more of a choices matter TM sort of thing where, yeah, you can talk to characters slightly differently. There is some characters that you can only solve a resolution by talking to them in a certain way. But again, it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't change the world. It doesn't change the story really. It doesn't really do anything.
Yeah.
Um,
But also, the other thing that does as well is like when I finish an area, like I didn't have any want to like play it again. Whereas
yeah,
in older RPGs and other RPGs, like I'd play an area and go, "Oh, I missed all of this. Like, I wanna play it again, but from a different perspective." Whereas like with
yeah.
this, is like I
So
feel like I experienced
when
everything.
when when I played New Vegas, I played it as a pretty through and through. Um, what's the name of the thing? Not Kaiser's Legion, the other one, the other faction.
Oh, I
NCR, NCR.
yes, yep,
So
yep,
I played as NCR pretty much through and through, and a lot of the game, um, there's like complete content in this game that is sort of locked behind being with the Legion.
yeah,
Where I want to do a second playthrough of the game and play through as a Kaiser's Legion and just see what that's
yeah.
like. This game, it's sort of, I guess the two camps are whether you're capitalist or non-capitalist. But at the end of the
Yeah,
day, you could be capitalist on one planet and non-capitalist on another planet. It doesn't make a fucking difference. There is no like
yeah,
difference in what you do really. Your actions don't really have any consequences. You can literally okay, there's no karma system really. There's a reputation system where you get positive rep from doing quests
yeah,
for certain factions, but you can just walk
It's
around
not.
stealing everything, and it doesn't fucking
Mm,
matter. No one
your
cares.
companions especially should care, right? Like that's where like really, they should really care. Because like us, because like Dragon Age Origins, like I think I still one of my favorite RPGs. Like if you did something wrong or quote unquote wrong in that game, right? Like one of your followers would turn and go, "Oh, that was great! Like plus 10, like relationship, right?" Another guy's like, "No, fuck you, minus 50. I can't believe you stole something." Like I was kind of expecting more of. I kind of wanted, but I wasn't expecting that. I wanted more of that, like
Yeah.
consequences, I suppose.
Another thing, like some of the companions are all right in the Outer Worlds. Like I like.
Yeah.
Let me look up their name. See, the thing is, I can see their faces, but I don't know what they're
Yep.
fucking called anymore. There's like
Yep. Yep.
uh companions or something like that.
Does that not show to some extent like how we feel about the companions?
I
Though? Like I
so
feel like
I like Nyoka. I think she's a pretty
yep.
interesting character. I think Ellie's fine. Pavati's kind of whatever. Vicar Max has an intriguing backstory, but then it's sort of just a nothing burger. I mean, you
Yeah.
get Vicar's Max companion quest is one of the more interesting ones. You get to go on like a fucking vision quest on a moon, and I was like,
Okay.
and it's like there's a quest in Fallout 3 where you take drugs and go on a vision quest, and New Vegas as well in the fucking tribal experiment, Honest Hearts. But that did it like way more interestingly. Whereas in like Outer Worlds, it feels like everything's scaled back in really small scale.
Right.
Whereas New Vegas has some of the most interesting companions in like a in an RPG where you have stuff like I think Boone is one of my favorite RPG characters of all time. He has such an interesting backstory, and I was constantly trying to keep doing his companion quests because he is such a like great story and is such an interesting character. Whereas most of the companion quests in Outer Worlds just boil down to you talk to your companion and you go and have a drink with them, and that's
Yeah.
it. And I was
Yeah.
like, that's the whole thing, is it? Like that's it. Like
No,
I don't know.
no intrigue, no like exploration of
So this is
issues.
how the level up system works. So the skills are like blocked together until you get to level 50, and then you can level them individually. And then basically there's skill checks in like dialogue if you take the things that there's hacking, there's lockpicking. There's no hacking or
But
lockpicking minigame, Tony, which I like because I hate that shit.
yeah, yeah, no, I did. But I was gonna say though, like if you have all these options and you have like skill checks and options, but you can do everything with other options, so what's the point?
So that was something I said to you yesterday. I was
Yeah,
saying the Outer
because
Worlds almost has this sense of FOMO for the player, where you'll get to a situation where you need to get into a room, right? Or there's an optional side quest to get into a room where
yeah,
the player
yeah,
wouldn't have to get into this room to complete the game, and it's locked behind a door. So
yeah,
what a traditional RPG would go is like, if you don't have the lockpicking skill, you're not getting in here.
no,
What the Outer
right,
Worlds does is goes, oh, if you don't have the lockpicking skill, we're going to put a door behind it that you can get to through a vent. We're also scared that players that have the hacking skill would be upset if they didn't get this random gun in here. So we'll put a terminal next to it that lets you into
yeah,
it. But we're scared that players that went just pure damage wouldn't be able to get this. So we'll put the key to get to the door in the next room that's right next to it. We're just really worried that players would actually have to think about the choices they make in the
yeah,
game. Let's just make
yeah.
sure they always have the opportunity to get every
So
single thing in the game.
yeah, because I think the conversation we had yesterday, like I didn't twig on this like before that. It's like what is wrong with like the choices and things, and it's like and you're like yeah, it has this FOMO
If you're an
sense
expert
of FOMO.
lockpicker, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
It doesn't
because
matter.
even something like Dragon Age, where I think like it does have this, but like it's really scaled back compared to like other RPGs. Whereas like if you went for the thief class, you could go through like tons and tons of doors, and like you could then like get loot. But if you went through anyone else, that you wouldn't have access to that. You'd have to like you went through mage, you'd have other stuff. You went through like Moraine, you could then
Maybe
like
what
talk your way
happened was
through.
like they made this content and they were like,
Yeah,
okay. And then they realized that the game was a lot more scaled back than they originally envisioned, and were like, okay, if we
yeah.
start locking off some of this content behind this stuff, we're going to run out of things to give players. Maybe that's what happened.
They thought like if you went down one route, the amount of content's still there. was not enough. Yeah, I could see that being a potential issue,
Another huge
but
complaint.
doesn't
Oh,
make it
gone.
any better.
Another huge complaint from me is the game is silent like 90% of the time. There is small like music soundscapes, but I was so disappointed when I started playing and I realized there wasn't a radio system in the game. I mean, it's iconic for a
It's
Fallout game
perfect.
to have a radio.
But would you not expect like propaganda radio from the capitalistic
Yes, that would be
society,
quite interesting.
like advertising stuff to you constantly? Like I would so expect that.
So the only real like music you get is you'll have like background music and then you'll have the jingles when you go to the vending machines.
Yeah.
Now
Although,
I like the
that's
jingles to
good.
the vending machines.
Yeah.
They get
Okay.
stuck in your head every time you go there. But like
Yeah.
walking around killing random enemies, not having any music at all gets boring pretty fast. Whereas in like Fallout, listening to the radio constantly made that shit so much more enjoyable. When I played this, I didn't have internet most of the time because I was moving house. So I was just playing through the outer world, and I had Fallout New Vegas installed on my computer. So what I did is I just went into the game files and I just listened to the New Vegas soundtrack while I was
Oh
playing this
right.
game for some of the time. And I got to tell you, when you're walking around with not much to do, but you're obviously you're playing the game, it is so much better to just to have some music there or something to listen to.
Yeah. I think leading off from this slightly, but the other thing I thought, whereas this is something where I'm actually going to praise Fallout 4 here a second, so watch out.
Cut the tape. Cut
Um,
the tape.
the other, yeah, sit down, guys. Um, one thing that I felt like when you walk around in the outer worlds is like you can basically avoid most threats. They're not if you don't want to. Like it doesn't, the world doesn't feel alive. Like you can go from one place to another, and like it's just like it looks great, but
Yeah.
like it doesn't feel alive. Whereas in Fallout 4, I don't think Fallout 4 is a great game. I think Fallout 4 is very, very flawed. But one thing I can't say, I can't say, like, I couldn't lie and say, like, oh, it feels dead. Like, no. Walking around Fallout 4, like, stuff happens. There's stuff, like,
Tony,
around the
this
corner that, like, you have
Tony,
to,
this
like,
is
deal with.
this is the point I was talking about earlier. I was like, I walked once into a primal in the early game. I was like,
Yeah.
holy shit, this guy's strong. I'm scared of this guy. I think he immediately kills me. I was like, oh, okay, there's like an actual enemy in the game I'm supposed to be
Yeah.
scared of and I'm supposed to die to. This
Like,
happened
gauge
once.
the enemies you can't kill.
This happens once in the early game, and then I was never scared of an enemy in the game ever
Yeah.
again. The game
Yeah.
becomes incredibly easy, incredibly fast. But like, for example, in like New Vegas, the death claws are killing you at the end of the game.
Yep.
Like they're a constant threat and are really hard to deal with. There's
Yeah.
no death.
Wait.
There's no death claw in the Outer Worlds. Like the closest
Equivalent.
you get is like the Mantisaur Queen. But even then, it's still pretty fucking easy to kill. Like,
Because like even in like Fallout 4, like you have like even like normal enemies. Like I get like yeah, in Fallout 4, death claws kill you like throughout the whole game as well. But like even like normal enemies is like like a ghoul that's like high. Like you go to that area and it's like crazy high level ghoul. It's like you just can't take him on until like you're better.
yeah.
In our worlds, like that doesn't really happen.
The most annoying thing to me, Tony, is there's like a museum in Edgewater where there's
Yeah.
like this exhibit and they've done like taxidermy and all the different creatures around the different planets.
Yeah.
And one of the ones they have is they have an exhibit for a mantid queen, and it's completely empty. And I was like, well, first of all, I was like,
Oh,
holy shit,
it's
there's a fucking
it's
mantid queen loose in this area. I'm gonna have to go and fight it, aren't I? But then
it's a
it's
setup for a quest, right?
and then it's revealed that the guy who was getting the mantid queen has gone off to another planet, and he's trying to track it down. And you
Right.
start this quest to go and find him.
Yeah.
But then, and I'm like, okay, now we're going to get to capture
is
this
it.
mantid queen and bring it back to this museum. This is all
Yeah,
part of
this
a
is it.
payoff. It never happens. You just kind of, you just find him dead, and that's about it.
I had to think that that has to be some sort of cut content, or they couldn't get it working or something.
I
Like,
was so excited to go and capture
there's
this
so much
Mantic Queen
setup.
and bring it back to... Because they had this environmental storytelling where they're like, hey, this
Yeah.
guy really wanted to capture this Mantic Queen and bring it back to this museum. I wonder if that will happen in the future. And it's
Yeah.
like, well, if that had a payoff, that would have been really cool, but it doesn't at all.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happened there because it seems like they put a lot of effort into that. I don't know. that seemed inexplicable to me.
Yeah,
But that would have been great. That would have been great because I love like as much as like I get annoyed with like I don't know because okay there are some mods for Skyrim that like kind of obfuscate like where like the quest markers are, and
yeah,
it's just like to me that's just really fucking annoying. But at the same time, if you have a good like oh this is missing like oh and like there's a note on saying like where you might be able to find them, and you go there and then it's actually stuff for you to do. It's like that's like organic, not like oh you need to go to this cave and get this random thing, but we're not going to show you where it is. Like that's not organic. And I like that. I like the former stuff, not the last stuff. I like the
Oh,
former stuff, like where like you can
another
naturally find quests that aren't real quests.
another thing that really pissed me off. So I found they put a shovel in the start of the game. They didn't let me dig up any grave sites. But no,
What?
no, you laugh. Fallout New
Yeah,
Vegas. If you find a shovel in the early game, you
you
can
can
go to
just.
grave sites and dig stuff up. They made it
Okay.
so that if you're randomly carrying a shovel, there's several points in New Vegas where you can dig stuff up.
Okay, that's pretty
There's
cool. That's pretty
actually
cool.
a setup that has a payoff. This game,
Yeah.
there's fucking nothing.
Well, it's just a
I
weapon,
feel like
isn't it?
there's so much more time and effort put into like that game, whereas this game just feels like. I think the biggest problem with this game is it's compared to one of the best games of all time because it's made by
Yeah,
the same people.
but this kind of comes to the point of my realization that we had in the conversation yesterday. It's like to me, everything there's everything is like there on paper to be good, but like it's then like it has all the components right, but it's
Yeah.
not done properly. Like it's not quite there. Like it's like maybe like 60-70% of the
Well,
way to go. Like it has everything laid down but not built up.
what I said was, if you watch our Bioshock review, I said Bioshock One is a great immersive sim.
Yeah,
Bioshock Infinite is a good action game, but it's not a good
with a good
immersive
story.
sim.
Yeah, and you said it's like a similar thing with New Vegas versus
Fallout New
Outer
Vegas
Worlds.
is a fucking amazing RPG. The Outer
Yeah,
Worlds is a great action game. It's not a particularly great RPG.
yeah.
Um,
But the one difference I would say between them is, or yeah, between like Infinite and Outer Worlds is that I just feel like they have everything in the game. If added more stuff to it, like they've added like the base mechanics to be a good RPG, but they just haven't fleshed it out or like
oh, I can be
they need
confusing
to
now. I
remove the
just
FOMO.
realized I've played the Outer Wilds and the Outer Worlds
Yeah, you have
and the DLCs that both games have.
of both of them. Yeah. Did we
Uh,
wait? Did we do a Tangerine on the
yeah, we did.
Outer Worlds DLC? Okay.
Yep. I said, don't listen to anything I'm saying, Busters. Go play the game.
Yeah, massive spoiler. Yeah, yeah. Okay. I don't know if we're in like final thought territory with Outer Worlds, but I want to say is like I feel like it had
Give
potential.
your final thoughts, because then I'll talk about the DLC, which I know
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
haven't touched. So
No, I've not touched the DLC. I've not even completed the Outer Worlds. But to me, the Outer Worlds could have been really, really, really good, but they didn't like do the last mile or like the last few miles, and like to me, it's like disappointingly close, but also so far.
that's why I was
But
so
but I love the game
excited
still.
for like Summer Jeff Fest for Xbox. I was like, I'm hoping they show something off about the Outer Worlds too,
Yeah, because
because
if they fix all the
it
problems
it
we talked
it,
about, it'd be
it,
so good.
if they change like a lot of these things in the Outer Worlds too, it could be a fantastic game. I love
Yeah, and
space games. I love the
it's
setting.
not like it's not like a Bethesda where it's like, oh, if they change all these things, but it's like completely ridiculous of how much is wrong. It's like no, like you could see a path to making it better,
Look,
right?
put a radio station in the game,
Yeah,
improve the perk system, and I
yeah.
think it's infinitely a better game.
Choices matter. Get rid of the FOMO. Make perks matter. All
Oh,
doable.
I mean, there is some great like. I think some of the best content is just like
Oh, look at this
the
beautiful
side
bit.
content. Um,
Yeah, I just
I
love the
remember
look
there's
of the
like
space
one
though.
of my favorite quests is like just like a random sidelight quest about a guy who's like breeding a bunch of sprats, and this other guy wants you to go and deal with him. And he has this thing where he keeps winking at you, and he works for
Right.
Sublight, which is like the company that's only a company in name, who's basically like the illegal smugglers of the company world. and he
Right.
keeps winking at you. And there's this dialogue option where you can just say, "You wink again, motherfucker! I'm going to punch you in the face." And then he goes, "Okay, I won't wink, wink." And then you could just punch him in the face. And he's like, "Why did you do that?" And I said, "Well, I said if you wink, I was going to punch you in the face." And he said, "I don't think you're actually going to punch me in the face, wink." And then you can punch him in the face again. And then, after punching him in the face several times, that increases your reputation with that faction, because that's the kind of guys they are, who just respect that kind of moxie attitude.
That is great. I
But
like
it's
that.
stuff like that where I'm like, Obsidian, that's
More
so
of that, more of
funny!
that.
Put more of that in the
Yeah,
game!
yeah. That sounds
Um,
amazing.
yeah,
Oh,
I think Space's Choice is just massively outshines the other factions, really, when it comes to, like, their fucking Moon Man, like, helmet
yeah.
thing that I put on every single character. Okay. One thing that they did well, stuff that has payoff. The Moonman helmet has so much hidden payoff in this game that it's kind of crazy. There's an entire. Okay, let's move on to the DLC.
Okay,
Let's
okay.
go on a Peril on Gorgon. There's an entire character on Gorgon who won't speak to you if you're wearing the Moonman helmet because he's terrified. He thinks that the Moonman is going to come and get him, and he won't talk to you if you're
Okay.
wearing it. There's also, I think his name's Martin on the Groundbreaker ship. He's basically one of these spokesperson who's. As you can see, I put Moonman helmets on every one of my characters, and it just constantly scares
Brilliant.
it constantly scares the shit out of me because I always turn around and there's two like moonmen staring at me, and I'm like, oh shit, I didn't expect that to be there.
Yeah, they're kind of terrifying.
But there's this character called like Martin, who's like he's like one of these what are they called, like mascots. So he's wearing like the Moonman helmet,
Oh.
and yeah, yeah, the butler's broken. Um, but you can just keep talking to him, and every line he says is just an advertisement for Space's Choice.
Right.
And it's just hilarious how you can just keep asking questions and he'll turn the question into like an advertisement for like, you make sure to buy Space's Choice toothbrush. And then at one point he'll accidentally advertise a Rizzo's product or something and you point it out and then he's like, oh shit, please don't tell anyone. And then also you can hack into the terminal near him that has all the emails of everyone on the Groundbreaker, and it's just him like trying to write to his mother telling him like he wants to escape and stuff like that, but he can't. And you can even buy a helmet from him, and he has like comments if you talk to him again wearing the helmet. That's the stuff I like, where I'm like,
Yeah, that's
they
cool.
actually have set up some payoffs.
Yeah,
Um,
discovering things. Yeah.
so Paralon Gorgon is set. So each DLC adds 3 extra levels to the game. But
Right.
other than
Okay.
that, it doesn't really change anything about the game. They're both like self-contained planets that don't really impact the base game in the same way where
Real.
New
Oh.
Vegas DLCs were very big, where they completely added new perks and stuff and completely changed the
Yeah.
way you played the game.
And you
Whereas
play
in
interact with the main story.
whereas in the Outer Worlds, the DLCs are kind of their own self-contained things that don't really have an impact.
That's unfortunate.
Um,
That's really unfortunate. Like, I really wanted it to be like actually like attached. Okay,
yeah.
that's
So
disappointing.
the general idea of I think Parallel Gorgon is the way that you get introduced to it, because you can't go to the Parallel Gorgon or Murder and Eridanos until you get to a certain point in the game.
Right.
And you'll know when you get to that point in the game because you'll receive like an invitation to it. I think Murder on Eridanos is like level 30, and then I think Parallel Gorgon's around level 20. Level 30 is the old like max. Um, and then it goes up to 36 with both DLCs.
Right. Okay.
But the way this one starts is you're on your ship and you get sent a biochemical hazard box, and it's got someone's arm in it. And in that arm is like a telegram asking you to come to this mansion near Gorgon to speak to someone about a job. So that's like
Right.
the setup for Gorgon. I
Hmm.
don't want to go too much into it because I don't want to spoil the DLC, especially for you, Tony, who hasn't played this.
Yeah,
Um,
especially with self-contained, and it's not. Yeah.
but basically, one of my main complaints about Peril on Gorgon is it's set up that you go to Gorgon, which is this planet where an event's happened, so a lot of people are no longer there.
Yeah.
So a lot of your like interaction with the people on Gorgon is done mostly through terminals. There's a lot of terminal reading on Peril on Gorgon.
Okay.
There's a
Right.
lot. I think
So
like
like
70%
the Dark
is just I was
Souls,
just reading terminals.
kind of like the Dark Souls, say like stuff has already happened in the world.
Yeah, I don't mind reading
Right.
terminals. Like I like a bit of reading
No,
terminals here and there when it mixes in
alongside
with an
everything
actual
else.
story.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's very much so. Yeah, it's very much so that you are seeing this from the perspective of an event that's already happened, and you're trying to figure out what happened there. Which can be done well. This get like Prey 2017 set up like this, where
But okay,
it does it very well.
it's but I feel like with Prey, like you both have something done in the past, and there's something you need to like do in the present, and you need to know information from the past to deal with the present.
I mean, yeah, for sure.
I think that's how you do it well. Like you have like almost like two parallel stories that interconnected.
Another thing I didn't like about the DLCs is they both have a lot of walking. There's very few fast travel points, and there's a lot of
Oh,
walking around, especially on Gorgon. It has several layers, so I'd get lost a lot, and then if you didn't walk down a certain path, you wouldn't be able to get to a certain other part, so you would have to like backtrack a lot and then walk up a different path in order to get to a different area of the map. That was something that I'd found that I didn't like that much. Um, yeah, there is multiple endings to the Gorgon story,
oh,
but
okay.
they don't really have too much of an impact, to be honest with you. It's sort of more of a choice of who do you want to side with. Okay, here's the XP, job done.
You hear some extra dialogue at the end that's different.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think one of them has less combat, but that's about it.
right.
Um,
So basically, some more problems with the base game, but in its own little
yeah,
DLC. Okay.
I think the someone was saying that the DLC was designed by a different company.
Was it?
I
Oh,
don't know.
I. I mean, it's not unheard of, but I would not expect it in this case.
I don't know. This is just a Steam review, but we'll see. Um, yeah, basically, what I want to say about so I've played the entirety of Peril. I think it's fine,
Okay.
but from what I've played so far, because I'm about I don't know, I'd say about halfway through or towards the end of the Murder in Eridos is the Murder in Eridanos seems to be way better than Peril on Gorgon from what I've
Right.
experienced. So let's talk about that one for a bit. Um, so Murder on Eridanos is much more interesting in my opinion. It's set up that the spokesperson for Spectrum Brown, Halcyon Helen, has been murdered. And the
Right.
setup is they need you to come in as a detective and try and figure out who done it. That's like just way more
Wait,
interesting to me than.
hang on. Is that's like the Hitman DLC or that Hitman level where you have to? Well, you can pretend to be the detective.
But it actually, so there's way more NPCs and dialogue in Murder in Eridanos. Eridanos is a hotel over an inhospitable planet. So you're constantly talking to people, and you actually feel like a detective. You are asking people's questions. You check up on people's alibis. You have a
Oh, that's
discrepancy
cool.
tool where you scan crime scenes and you check the chemical compounds. You talk to different people. There's a hilarious side quest on Murder in Eridanos where you have to try and figure out who destroyed the pool, and then there's two options to do that. This has a choice matter where you can either help them fix the pool, or you can go the other option, which I chose because it was hilarious, where you can pretend to be working for Rizzo's, and you basically just go, you basically destroy the pool and then scream, I'm work for Rizzo's. Rizzo's did it. And try and make it like it was corporate espionage.
Okay.
Like it has some
That's
incredible.
good.
I mean, there's some funny shit in the base game as well. Like it reminds me, the head of the sublight organization is convinced that aliens exist, and you can
Right.
even go as far as to say, "Yes, I believe you, aliens exist." And then you have to find this person she's told you is an alien, and she wants you to kill her. And you can just straight up kill her if you want, or you can talk to her and actually figure out what's going on. But that's the sort
Right.
of stuff that I like.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Um,
It sounds a lot better already.
yeah, from what I've played, it seems at least like from like playing through it so far, Merlin and Eridanos seems a lot more interesting. It
hmm
seems even more interesting than the base game in some respects. There's a lot more, and again in this one, there's a lot more video conversations. There's a lot more audio tapes, which I think is way more interesting than just you'll go around and you read 50 different
Yeah.
terminals.
Yeah. 100%.
Um, but because I think generally the story here is a lot more interesting, especially than the DLC and then some of the base game. But I think
Yeah.
just from like what people said, like it may be a case of you think it's going somewhere until the end where it doesn't matter, sort of thing.
Right.
So we'll have to
Yeah.
see how it turns out. But based
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
what I've played of it, it seems pretty good. So I can recommend that if after hearing what I've said, I have enjoyed my time in the Outer Worlds. I think it's a great action game. I think the biggest crime it has is that it has to be compared to the greatest RPG game of all time, Fallout New Vegas, because it's made of
Yeah.
Obsidian.
But it
Um,
could have been so much better.
it's a good action game. I've had
Yep.
quite a bit of fun with it, and I think if you're going to play it, I'd recommend playing through the base game, and I really recommend Murder and Eridanos, the DLC. That is really, really fun. Peril on
Okay.
Gorgon, you can play, you could skip, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the Outer Worlds, and Tony, anything else to say?
No, I feel pretty happy with like our coverage here.
There
I
it
feel like
is.
we've gone in deep on this one.
All
It's a
right.
long tangerine on one game.
All right. See you next time, guys. Goodbye.
Bye.